Millions of years ago, before our existence, the world was under the rule of very powerful and evil beings who subjected our ancestors through a reign of terror. They were known as the Dark Ones, dominating all civilizations through intimidation and torture. However, one day, beings of light emerged from the sky, gifted with mystical powers, who crossed the stars to come and save us. The confrontation between both sides lasted for centuries, until finally the beings of light emerged victorious. The losers were banished to an underworld kingdom, isolated for all eternity, while the beings of light returned to their kingdom, promising to return if necessary. This was undoubtedly one of the most interesting manuscripts that Alexander had read so far. Continuing with your reading, on a mysterious island, one of these cells is located, which was guarded by a group of villagers who regularly approached the entrance to verify that the place was under control. However, one day they disappeared completely. The record of missing people increased every time they visited this island. Unfortunately, there is no record of survivors. Therefore, it is recommended not to approach it. Not knowing what to do, Alexander takes his medallion, placing it in the center of his room, turning off all the lights, after finding himself in absolute silence and darkness. This blinds him to project distant worlds being tortured by these entities, until one day they reached ours, wiping out entire races and subjecting the rest to a regime of slavery. For this reason the gods saw the need to intervene. In this way Alexander followed the instructions of Athena. After visualizing the island, everything seemed normal. Alexander opened the box given by her, and this was an armor. Thanks to this, Alexander just jumped into the water and began to swim as if he were a fish. Thanks to the medallion, he was able to follow the indicated route until he reached under a cave. Despite the darkness, the medallion illuminated the direction to follow. Thanks to this, Alexander managed to get to the surface. The environment was inhospitable, with a large dark cloud that prevented seeing the sunlight. Now the existence of a dome was understandable, so the dark entities could do everything they wanted. At the same time, Alexander knew that he would be exposed. However, he found some objects in his suit that would be very useful. As he walked through the woods, these devoid of having their own life, no leaves, no animals, and no people around, the only thing that worried him was that the signal of the medallion was the only thing that broke the silence. Suddenly a group of dark beings appeared walking, in one movement. Alejandro hid behind a tree, after seeing how those beings walked in a group, until they saw something that made them stop. An unexpected rider arrived riding on a black steed, which stopped right in front of them. This entity was asking him about the prisoners and the preparations for the sacred ritual, to which the others only said that everything was ready since the new prisoners would serve as a source of power to keep the dome active. Alejandro knew that those beings were directly related to the disappearances, so he decided to follow them stealthily. Following the steps of these mysterious beings, Alejandro noticed that they did not react to anything. Their movements were repetitive and they would go in a straight line, keeping their distance. Alejandro noticed that those beings came directly to a volcano that was giving off black smoke. The disturbing thing was that there were no entrances to the interior, but these beings simply passed through it as if they were ghosts, which left Alejandro surprised, who did not know how to follow them. The only thing he was sure of was that the supposed ritual would take place inside that volcano. Suddenly, with a single thought, a pair of wings came out of the back of his suit, which allowed him to fly through the air. This flight was so high that he could see the top of the volcano, until he reached it directly, and plummeted, something he could never imagine. After falling into the volcano, Alexander stopped his flight just above the altar, where he could see the prisoners who were tied to the walls with chains. Among them were some gods of Olympus who apparently could not use their powers. Alexander decided to wait hidden at the top with a panoramic view of the place. In addition to that, there was a strange machine which gave off smoke, the same one that reached the great cloud that covered the island. At that moment someone began to speak in his mind. This voice came from one of the prisoners. This warned him that his suit would keep him hidden from the entities, but by changing color he would be visible to them again, which would put him at a disadvantage. The voice insisted that he must do what he ordered to obtain victory. It only took some time, until more prisoners were arriving at the place, where the others were waiting for them. One of them looked in bad condition. While they finished putting the chains on the newcomers, the others were preparing everything to start the ritual, where everyone placed everything in front of a large glass mirror, which began to shine as soon as one of the entities began to pronounce words in a strange language. Immediately the mirror began to project a strange figure, which began to extend its tentacles towards one of the prisoners. After choosing one, the other entities freed him to be taken by the great entity, which moved him right in front, while the creature said that he would be the first sacrifice of the day. Only then would they keep the device that emanates smoke active to cover the island. Just then, the same voice began to speak in his mind. It told him that he should move right behind the machine. When he arrived there, he just had to follow the instructions. Without thinking, Alejandro used his wings to move without being detected, since everyone was focused on the torture of the prisoner. Once behind the maquila, Alejandro heard the screams of horror of the prisoner, but the voice insisted that he should deactivate the machine. To do so, Alejandro had to open the central panel and remove a dark-colored diamond for one that he had in string on his suit. This was bright blue. After changing it, Alejandro had to replace the front lens, which was a dark medallion with the insignia of a dark entity, for a medallion that he had on the back of his armor, which had the sign of Hermes. At the end of the process, Alejandro watched as the black smoke was displaced by an intense blue light which was shot into the sky, causing a large hole in the dark cloud. In this way, the sun's rays illuminated the bottom of the crater intensely. As soon as the light fell directly on the aspects, they began to burn as if they were cooking. With no other options, they had to move quickly to avoid the light. On the other hand, the prisoner who was trapped managed to free himself from the dark tentacles and managed to run towards the center of the light. Suddenly, a lightning sent by Zeus hits him and manages to change his form. It was Hermes who had been captured earlier to inform the gods of what had happened on that island. Now with his powers, he began to move at full speed, freeing the other prisoners in a matter of seconds, while the octopus tried to extend its tentacles to try to catch them. However, the hole in the cloud slowly expanded, illuminating the interior more and more, weakening the dark entity, who began to move slowly towards the mirror. The freed soldiers began to subdue the other entities, who no longer asked to move due to the intense sunlight. Only some ran inside. Following the orders of the inner voice, Alexander used his wings to fly towards the mirror and take it before the enormous entity reached him. Then he ascended towards the sky at full speed. Suddenly the voice told him to release it, and after releasing it, another lightning bolt broke it into 1,000 pieces. When they fell to the ground, they impacted on the enormous dark entity, causing enormous wounds in its extremities. Its pain was so intense that it could no longer move. Without an escape route and seeing how the enormous cloud in the sky was disappearing, the entity began to close its eyes until it melted like ice. Alexander returned to the base of the volcano and removed the golden medallion from the artifact. Then he helped Hermes evacuate the prisoners out of the volcano. Once outside, another lightning bolt impacted the base of the volcano, causing it to collapse completely. After the disappearance of the dark cloud, the vegetation reappeared, along with the animals thanks to the sunlight. Now the island was out of the domain of the entities. Now Hermes went to Alexander, telling him that he was the one who spoke to him mentally. Despite having found the weakness of the entity, he was another one of the prisoners. That's why he asked Zeus for help to send someone to his aid. As recognition of his courage, Hermes gave him a golden box, with the help of the medallion. Alexander placed the medallion on the lid. After a few twists, it opened. In the middle was an imposing figure of Hermes, forged with platinum, his golden armor, on a fine diamond base with golden edges.